What if everything you sacrificed for, every bill you paid, every family member you carried, every personal dream you delayed, what if all of it led you to losing everything? Your job, your business, your properties, your wife, your children, your mother. And what if the one person who tried to warn you was the same person you were too proud to call when it all fell apart? This is not a fictional story designed to entertain you. This is a mirror, and I need you to look into it carefully, because somewhere in this story you are going to see yourself, or someone you know, or someone you are becoming. My name is Dan. Welcome to Invest with Dan. And today, we are telling the story of two boys named Alex and Dan. Let us get into it. There were two boys. Alex was born into a wealthy family, not wealthy in the flashy, showing off kind of way, but wealthy in the quiet, structured, disciplined kind of way. His parents understood money. They understood that wealth is not what you spend, it is what you build. And they built something real, something that gave Alex a foundation most people spend their entire lives trying to create from scratch. Dan was born into a poor family. And I want to be careful with that word, poor. Because poor does not mean broken. Poor does not mean without dignity. Poor does not mean without love. Dan's family had very little money, but they had something powerful. They had heart. They sacrificed for Dan. His parents worked themselves to the bone to give him opportunities they never had. They sponsored his education. They believed in him, and when the world gave them very little reason to believe in anything, Dan was their everything, and he knew it. These two boys from complete different worlds ended up at the same college, and something remarkable happened. They became friends, real friends, the kind that stay up late talking about life, the kind that push each other in class, the kind that laugh at the same things and argue about the same things and somehow make each other better just by being around each other. Both of them were brilliant. Both of them were liked by everyone. Both of them graduated and worked into good jobs on the strength of their intelligence and their character. From the outside, they looked like two young men starting from exactly the same place, but they were not. Because what happens after school is not determined by your grades. It is determined by your mindset, and their mindset shaped by the families they came from. We're about to take them in a very different directions. Alex went home to his wealthy family and did what wealthy families do. He learned the pattern, not the pattern of spending, not the pattern of showing off, the pattern of building. His parents sat him down and explained something that most people never get explained to them by anyone who actually knows what they are talking about. They said, Alex, your salary is not for living large. Your salary is for securing your future. Enjoy your life, but invest first. Always invest first. And Alex listened. He started putting money in a wave before he spent anything. He started investing in stocks. He started building assets, not because it was glamorous, but it was not. Investing is one of the most boring looking activities a young person can do. But boring done consistently produces results that are anything but boring. Dan went home to his family. And his family, the family that has sacrificed everything for him to be where he was waiting. Not with investment advice, with bills, school fees for younger siblings, medical expenses for aging parents, house repairs that had been postponed for years, debts that had been quietly accumulating in the background of his childhood that he had not known about until now. And Dan Good, loyal, loving Dan. Look at the people who had given him everything and said yes. Yes to all of it. Because how do you say no to the person who made you? How do you look your mother in the eye, the woman who worked 3 jobs so you could go to school, and tell her you cannot help? How do you turn away from your siblings who look up to you as the one who made it? You cannot. You do not. Dan said yes. And then he said yes again. And again. And again. Until yes became his default. Until his salary became a community resource that served everyone except himself. Until investing, the very thing that would have secured his future, was always the thing that God pushed aside for the next urgent family need. Months passed, then years. Alex was building quietly, portfolio growing, assets accumulating, a financial foundation being laid brick by invisible brick. Dan was working, providing, sacrificing, loved by everyone who needed something from him, but building nothing for himself. Time has a way of making the invisible visible. And as the years went by, what had been a subtle differences in approach between Alex and Dan began to show in ways that could no longer be ignored. Alex was moving not just financially, but in every way. Opportunities found him because he had positioned himself well, because his financial stability gave him the freedom to take risks that scared other people, because the discipline he had built made him someone that other serious people wanted to be around and do business with. Dan was standing still, not because he was not working hard. He was working incredibly hard, harder than almost anyone around him. But his hard work had a leak in it. Everything he earned flowed out before it could accumulate into something. And slowly, so slowly, it crept up on him. Dan began to notice the gap. You will see Alex's life from a distance. The growth, the opportunities, the stability, the quiet confidence of a man who knew that whatever happened tomorrow, he had something to fall back on. And something dark began to grow inside Dan. Not hatred. Dan was not a hateful person, but jealousy. The quiet, creeping, uncomfortable kind of jealousy that you feel towards someone you genuinely care about. And that makes you feel even worse about yourself because you know you should not feel it. Dan felt it anyway. To his credit, Dan did not let the jealousy consume him in silence. He reached out to Alex, and Alex, being the kind of friend he was, made time immediately. They sat down together and Dan laid it all out. The family bills, the sacrifices, the stagnation, the feelings of watching his friend grow while he felt trapped in a circle. He did not know how to break. Alex listened. He did not interrupt. He did not make Dan feel small. And when Dan finished speaking, Alex said something that Dan was not ready to hear. He said, "Dan, I love you. And because I love you, I need to tell you something honest. You cannot be everything to everyone and also be something to yourself. It is not just possible. You are carrying bees that are not yours to carry. Your parents' responsibility was to raise you. They did that and God blessed them for it. But you were not born to become their retirement plan. You were not born to become your siblings' financial support system. You were born to build your own life. And then, from the overflow of a life well built, help everyone around you. Not from the seed money, from the harvest. Anyone who needs you to give before you are grown will eventually have nothing left to receive from you. You cannot pour from an empty cup, Dan. And right now, every month, they are emptying your cup before you even get a chance to feel it. Alex used a phrase that stayed with Dan. Even if Dan was not ready to act on it yet, he said, anyone who tries to be everything for everyone around them before they have built anything for themselves will eventually have nothing. Not for their family, not for anyone, not even for themselves. Dan nodded. He said the right things. He thanked Alex for the honesty, and he said he would think about it. And then he went home. And something happened in his mind on the way home that undid everything Alex had said. The warmth of the conversation faded as Dan walked through his front door. And the thought came, why is Alex telling me not to take care of my family? Does he even understand what my family went through? He was born with money. What does he know about sacrifices? Is he jealous of the love my family has for me? Does he want me to abandon the people who made me? And the most dangerous thought of it all, my family was there for me when I had nothing. Alex just had money handed to him. Who is he to tell me about loyalty? And just like that, the advice that could have changed his life was dismissed. Not because it was wrong. It was not wrong. But because pride is a filter that makes truth look like an attack. And that's pride. The pride of a man who had built his identity around being the provider, around being the one who came through, around being the good son and the good brother, could not receive what Alex has offered him. So Dan went back to his life, back to the bills, back to the sacrifices, back to saying yes to everyone else and no to himself. And for a while, life continued. Not great, not growing, but familiar. And familiar felt safe. And then came the news that changed everything. The company Dan worked for was under new management. There had been rumors, a buyout, a takeover, a change at the top. Dan had not paid more attention to it. He was too busy keeping his head down and getting his work done. But when the name of the new owner was announced, Dan felt the grandest shift beneath him. It was Alex. Alex had bought the company. The company where Dan worked. The company where Dan had spent years building someone else's dream because he could not find the time or money to build his own. His friend, the one who he had quietly resented, the one he had dismissed, the one he had told himself was just lucky, had become his boss. The jealousy that had been a quiet in the background became defining. And Dan did nothing that felt like power in the moment, but was the most expensive decision of his life. He walked into the HR. He wrote a resignation letter and he quit. Not because the job was bad, not because he had something better lined up, but because his ego could not survive the idea of working for Alex. He killed his job out of jealousy, out of pride, out of inability to separate his friend's success from his own. And in doing so, he walked away from stability, from income, from the one person who had always genuinely wanted the best for him. Dan told himself a story. He said, I am going to build something of my own. I do not need Alex. I do not need anyone. I am going to show everyone what I am made of. And the passion behind that decision was real. The determination was real. But passion without preparation is just energy with no direction. Dan started a business. And for a moment, just a moment, it felt like it might work. The energy was there. The vision was there. The hustle was there, but something else was there too. His family. The same family he had given everything to. The same people he had sacrificed his investment for, his savings for, his future for, they came to work for him. And when Dan discovered, in the most painful way possible, is it true that many people learn too late? Business and family are two of the most complicated things in the world to mix together. Accountability disappeared. Discipline disappeared. Professional standards disappeared. Because how do you fire your brother? How do you discipline your cousin? How do you hold your uncle accountable when he was at your graduation and danced at your wedding? You cannot. You do not. And so the business softened. And then it struggled. And then within 2 years, it collapsed. Not because Dan was not capable, but because the people around him were there for the benefits, not the building. The collapse of the business was just the beginning of the unraveling. The pressure came from everywhere at once. Debt from business, family member who had been depending on Dan's income now angry and resentful because the source had dried up. Properties sold one by one. The car, gone. The apartment upgraded, gone. The savings that should have been investment but had been spent on family, gone. Life went back to zero, worse than zero. Because at least at zero, you have possibilities ahead of you. That was below zero, in debt, in shame, in silence. He reached out to his family, the same family he had given everything to, the same people he had carried on his back for years at the expense of his own growth. And they did not come. One by one, the calls went unanswered. The doors that he had spent years keeping on for them were suddenly closed when he knocked. When you have nothing, you find out very quickly who was there for you and who was there for what you had. And then his wife, the woman he had built what he thought was a family with, sat him down one evening and told him everything. She told him she was leaving, and then told him something that broke something inside him that had never fully healed since. She told him the children were not his. I want to be very careful here, because I know this part of the story is heavy, but I am not going to soften it because life does not soften its blows. And if this story is going to be honest, it has to be fully honest. Dan has sacrificed his investment, his friendship, his career, his business, and built what he thought it was a family. And that family was not what he thought it was. His mind shattered, not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet, devastating way that happens when everything you work for turns out to have been built on sand. Every sacrifice, every yes, every bill you paid, every dream you deferred, every time you chose family over investment, every time you dismissed Alex's advice, all of it, for what? He sat with that question for a very long time. Dan found a small apartment, modest, quiet, humbling. He was managing, barely but managing. And then the call came. His mother was sick, seriously sick. And within a few months, the woman who he had worked 3 jobs so he could go to school, the woman who had believed in him when everything was against him, the woman whose sacrifice had been the original reason Dan said yes to everyone, was gone. I do not have words for that kind of grief, and I will not pretend to. But I will say this. Sometimes, life strips everything away not to destroy you, but to reveal what is left when everything false has been removed. And what was left when everything was gone was Dan. Just Dan. No title, no business, no family, no properties, no wife, no children, no mother. Just a man sitting in a small apartment alone with nothing but the truth of every decision he had ever made. Months passed, then a year, then more. Dan existed. He did not live. He got through this. He managed the basics. But the shame and the jealousy that had been with him for so long had now become worse, keeping him isolated from the one person who had never stopped being his friend, Alex. Every time Dan thought about reaching out, the shame would answer first. What do I even say? He tried to tell me I did not listen. He is successful and I am nothing. He will pity me or worse. He will say I told you so. And so Dan stayed silent for longer than he should have. Until one evening, a quiet, unremarkable evening, something inside Dan finally gave way. Not collapsed, gave way. Like a dam that has been holding back too much water for too long, finally deciding that what is on the other side cannot be worse than the pressure of holding everything in. Dan picked up his phone and called Alex. Alex answered on the second ring, and when he heard Dan's voice, he did not say I told you so. He did not make Dan feel small. He did not remind him of everything, every warning he ignored. He said, tell me where you are, I am coming. They met, and Dan told him everything, every part of the story, the jealousy, the resignation, the business, the family that disappeared, the wife, the children that were not his, the mother he had lost, the apartment, the silence, the shame, all of it. He laid it at his friend's feet like a man who had finally run out of the energy it takes to carry things alone. And Alex, this man who had every reason to feel vindicated, every reason to remind Dan of every conversation they ever had, simply listened. And when Dan finished, Alex said, you are still here. That means it is not over. It was never over. Come back to the company. Your position is waiting. And this time, we are going to do the other thing together. The thing I tried to tell you years ago, we are going to invest. And Dan, do not worry about age. It is never too late to build. Never. Dan went back. He took the job. He swallowed whatever was left of the pride that had cost him so much and went back. And Alex, true to his word, sat with Dan, not as a boss, as a friend. He walked him through everything, how to invest, where to start, how to think about money differently, how to separate need from want, how to build slowly and surely instead of chasing fast and losing everything. Dan started small, but he started. And for the first time in a very long time, he was building something from himself. Not for his family, not for his wife, not for anyone else. For Dan himself. Life never fully returned to what he had been. And honestly, Dan did not want it to. What he had been was built on the wrong foundation. What it became instead was something quieter, something more honest, something sustainable. He lived comfortably, not extravagantly as Alex. Not in the way his old pride would have demanded, but comfortably, genuinely, peacefully. And then, one of those unexpected turns that only real life can produce. Dan adopted a son, a boy who needed a father, and a man who needed a purpose that was truly his own. And Dan poured into that boy everything he had learned, not just about money, but about life. He told him about Alex. He told him about the abuse. He told him about the jealousy. He told him about the business. He told him about the wife and the children that were not his. He told him about his mother. He told him everything because he believed that the most valuable inheritance you can leave a child is not money. It is truth. And the evidence he gave that boy, the advice he built into the foundation of everything he taught him was this: invest in yourself first always before you invest in someone else's life. Be good to your friends. Real friends are rarer than money. And a good friend, the kind that tells you the truth even when you do not want to hear it, that is worth more than anything any investment would ever produce. Cherish them. Protect those relationships because everything else can be rebuilt. But time cannot be recovered. And the years I wasted because I was too proud to listen, those are gone. Do not let yours go the same way. Dan dedicated everything, every piece of good, every achievement, every quiet victory of his rebuilt life to Alex. Not because Alex needed the credit, but because Dan needed to say it. Because gratitude expressed out loud to the person who deserves it is one of the most healing things a human being can do. If you have stayed with this story until now, thank you so much. Genuinely thank you. Because this was not a short story. And it was not a comfortable one. But the most important things really are. Let me leave you with a few words before you go. Please invest. I am begging you with everything I have inside of me. Please invest. Not someday. Not when things calm down. Not when the family pressure reduces. Not when you feel ready. Now. Whatever amount you have, start now. Because the gap between Alex and Dan was not talent. It was never luck. It was not even the family they were born into. It was one decision made consistently over a long period of time. Invest first, please. Build yourself first. And on the subject of family, it is okay to love your family. It is okay to help your family. It is beautiful to be gorgeous, to be generous, with the people who raised you. But do not carry bills that are not yours. Your parents brought you into this world without asking your permission. That was their decision, and their responsibility was to raise you, not to hand that responsibility to you before you have even built your own life. You can help from overflow. You cannot sustain anyone if you drain yourself dry first. Take yourself first. Build yourself first. Invest in yourself first. And from that foundation, you will have so much more to give than you ever would have if you had given everything away before you grew. God bless every single one of you. Please subscribe if this channel has ever given you something real. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Dan's story before they leave it. Like it if something in this video shifted something in you. And leave a comment because I genuinely want to know what part of Alex and Dan's story hits you the hardest. I'll see you in the next one. Stay building, stay investing, and always choose your real friends wisely.